Hello guys and gals, and this is part 33 of our reading of Rod Serling's Twilight Zone, 26 Unforgettable Explorations into the Realm of the Supernatural, and it is edited by Walter B. Gibson. We're going to go over the copyright information, and it should be on the screen right now. Clearly says here, Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone is copyright 1963 by Cayuga Productions Incorporated. Rod Serling's Twilight Zone Revisited, copyright by 1964 by Cayuga Productions Incorporated. All rights reserved. This 1983 edition is published by Bonanza Books, distributed by Outlet Book Company, which is a Random House company, and the address is there if you want it. This book was previously published as two separate works entitled Rod Serling's The Twilight Zone and Rod Serling's Twilight Zone Revisited. Printed and bound in the United States of America, and all that information is there if you want it, along with the Library of Congress information and all that. In the last part, I believe the two miners, or I believe they were miners, the two people found, the Edge of Doom. Okay. The Edge of Doom, there was a guy, and he was about to die, I think. He was a mountain climber. I don't remember what his name is, but hey, let's get this going. Lord Archie piloted old Geordie back across the hall, easing him to his seat, and smiled sympathetically as the old man... Okay, wait. As the old man laid aside his stick and resumed his doze. Then, of a sudden, Geordie was on his feet again, gripping Lord Archie's arm, no longer bowed. He had reared to his full height, seemingly shaking the years from him. For he strode forward without his stick. His eyes had a glint that even the fire could not match. "I heard it again," he exclaimed, "someone calling my name, like that night when we went to find the Baron. As you will remember, Lord Archie, it came twice and again. A last long cry, but it was falling, falling, falling." Geordie's own voice trailed, and his hands weakened as though to slip away, but he was swayed by... But as he swayed, he supplied a bony clutch as firm as in the old days. His eyes blazed anew as he demanded, "Where is the Baron now, Lord Archie?" "In Switzerland, Buchanan. How far away would that be from here?" "Hundreds of miles. The last letter that he wrote took a week to get here." I have heard of Switzerland. They have mountains there." "Right, Buchanan. Great mountains called the Alps." "And Lord Francis would be climbing them?" "He is always climbing mountains. You know that, Geordie." For the first time, Lord Archie had called Buchanan by his given name of Geordie, but old Geordie did not realize it. He was still thinking of that distant call. "He would be climbing the highest of them," declared Geordie. The lids closed over his staring eyes. "I can see it, rising like a mighty stone above him." The Matterhorn, that was a mountain he planned to climb according to his last letter. It will be his headstone. They will never find his body." With that prophecy, old Geordie returned to his place by the fire and sat there sorrowing and silent. Lord Archie, hopeful that Geordie's strange vision had been imagination rather than second sight, sent a telegram to Zermatt, addressed to Lord Francis. The reply came from officials there, telling of his young cousin's fate, for by then Whymper and the Togwalders had completed their perilous descent from the Matterhorn and had made their way back to Zermatt, bringing the full story of how their four companions had plummeted to sudden death. Search parties found 3 bodies on the Great Matterhorn Glacier, those of Cross, Hadow, and Hudson, all as close together in death as they had been in those last moments of their lives. But the body of Lord Francis was not with them. In that instant, when he had poised upon the brink, sending the mental flash to Geordie, the rope must have snapped beneath him. The others had broken loose, and Lord Francis had fallen after them, alone to land upon some hidden ledge or in some deep crevice that might be anywhere on the mile-high face of the sheer precipice. Days became weeks, weeks became months after the reports of searchers. Always the reports of searchers were the same, no sign of the body. During that period, old Geordie nodded more and more as he sat beside the fire in the Scottish manner, becoming ever more feeble. When new reports arrived from Zermatt, Lord Archie would lay a hand upon the old retainer's shoulder and say, They have not found him yet, Geordie. Nay, Geordie would croak, nor will they ever. So it went until Geordie's dying days, late in the autumn. One misty afternoon, Geordie did not respond to the kindly touch. His features were a fixed smile, as though his closed eyes had gained a distant glimpse of a familiar face, as though his lips, now sealed in death, alone could tell where Lord Francis's body might be found. For Geordie's expression was exactly as it had been those other times, years before, when he had gone to rescue the lost Baron. Wherever Lord Francis might be, old Geordie would be there too. Through the years that followed, searchers still failed to find the body. The little churchyard of Zermatt contains 3 tombstones bearing the name of Charles Hudson, Robert Hadow, and Michael Cross, but the monument to Lord Francis Douglas is the Matterhorn itself. Towering above his mortal remains, the annals of psychic science tell how travelers in remote mountain passes have occasionally encountered phantom figures recognizable as those climbers who were lost in those very reaches. There are cases on record where bodies supposedly have been recovered through the guidance of their own ghosts, but a somewhat different legend has grown around the mighty Matterhorn. At times when the grim gray shaft is draped with darkish clouds, climbers feeling their way amid that dangerous pall have glimpsed a beckoning figure high upon some inaccessible shelf, but it is not the figure of young Lord Francis Douglas, gone a century ago, yet forgotten still. According to the fanciful reports of the few who have seen the spectre closely, it is the wraith of an old kilted Scotsman, an incongruous sight indeed amid the alpine setting. They say, too, that the apparition swirls into nothingness as elusively as the mist itself. But as it fades, the figure has been seen to gesture downward below the rock wall, while the wind, dissipating the phantom shape, has been heard to sigh as though calling up from the depths, Geordie. Okay, let's start with this one. It is called The Fiery Spell. From the outside, Folsom's Rural Mart looked like any other old-time general store at a forgotten crossroads. Though only an hour's drive from New York, it had been bypassed by parkways, turnpikes, and expressways, so that the greater the traffic, the fewer the number of cars that went by Folsom's corners. As for local trade, it had been lured away by shopping centers, supermarkets, and trading stamps. Other places gave much more for the money and carried a bigger stock than Folsom's Rural Mart. Nobody bought anything there except a newspaper or cigarettes if they happened to be out of them. That all pleased old Abner Folsom, who had acquired the corner store as a hand-me-down from his grandfather. When business fell off, Folsom let his niece Matilda tend store, while he roved the fields and woodlands, bringing back assortments of roots, herbs, and barks. These he boiled and distilled in a back room and had once been a cowshed, to concoct remedies that his grandfather had written down, but had never made because he was too busy tending store. Folsom soon found that these concoctions could not compete with the products of modern drugstores, so he delved into occult books for stronger ingredients. There he found such items as owl wings, toad brains, rabbit feet, wolf eyes, frog toes, adder forks, lizard legs, and bat's blood, all recommended for various purposes. Folsom talked the boys of the countryside into bringing in such items and trading them for the candy and soda pop that he never managed to sell. From his back room brews, Folsom compounded powders, filtrates, I think that's how it's pronounced, filtrates, and perfumes, so that he sold to city peddlers who guaranteed that they would bring luck, prosperity, and love to all who bought them. To increase their potency, Folsom also made up seals, charms, and talismans, engrossing them in gold ink. And on special parchment. He added skull rings, snake rings, and elephant rings to his line, along with magic mirrors and crystal balls in which viewers hoped to envision the future. The old country store formed a perfect front for this clandestine activity. Anyone who entered there found Matilda drowsing behind the ancient counter with high showcases fronted by curved glass and topped with antique candy jars. Old oil lamps hung above racks of postcards with cartoons that people once thought were funny. There were gum boots, straw hats, bicycle bells, and other leftovers that nobody ever bought. And over by the wall, where a tall clock kept the wrong time, was a Cracker Barrel with a checkerboard for customers who wanted to while away the day. Occasionally, customers found the city would stop. Occasionally, customers from the city would stop in and ask to see Old Doc, as they called Abner Folsom. Matilda always waved them into Uncle Abner's back room, and old-timers at the checkerboard invariably chuckled over the fact that such slickers were being tooken by Abner. Anyone who brought the stuff that Folsom made up would have to be very stupid. But since city folk were very stupid anyway, one point just proved the other. Rick Hedry, who was anything but stupid, usually was very cagey when he stopped at Folsom's Corner. His trick was to arrive just after the rural mart had closed so he could pound at the door and claim that his car was out of gas. Then Folsom would come out and work the lone gas pump in the driveway. After that, Rick would go into the store with him and settle up. Always, Rick would leave with a package of Old Doc's backroom products, but from the bland look on his blunt featured face, Rick might have been carrying a few cartons of cigarettes or some boxes of stale candy. However, on this late autumn afternoon, Rick didn't have time to waste. He had 3 men in the car with him, and he told one to wait there while the other 2 followed him inside. Matilda was behind the counter, and she gave a lazy nod when Rick asked if he could see Old Doc. A customer with shaggy hair and a white beard was sitting by the Cracker Barrel, and Rick turned to his 2 companions and said, "Sit down, Ozzy, and play a game of checkers with this character. You think you're good, but I'll lay you even money that he takes you 2 out of 3. And you, Mort, you take a look at those postcards. Some of them are howlers. I won't be long." With that, Rick went through to the back room and knocked on the door. He was admitted by Abner Folsom, whose long, thin, withered features had an anxious look until he recognized Rick Hendry. Then his straightened lips cracked into a happy smile and he reserved for his best customers. I have just what you want, declared Folsom, reaching for a box of what appeared to be small hard candies. Fast luck drops. Swallow one before you horse race, and you're sure to pick a winner. They're better than the gambler's luck powder, and you have to burn beforehand, because that's likely to wear off. Not now, rejoined Rick. I'm after something else. Like Easy Life powder or Lucky Number oil? No, Doc. I only peddle those to chumps. You know and I know that those things don't work enough to matter. I want something for myself, something that's sure. Like a bat's heart tied to your right arm with a red silk string so you can win any card game you play. No, Doc. Stronger medicine than that. You mean an amulet to protect you against gunfire? Those things sound good, Doc, but I've never known them to work. I want something better. Then you want a charm to ward off witchcraft, decided Folsom. I have the very thing right here. Folsom produced a small square parchment which bore cabalistic signs in gold and a square of Latin words in the center. And let me pause real quick. And this is what it looked like. Sator, Aripo, Tenet, Opera, Rotus. Rick studied the curious formula a bit skeptically. He had more respect for Folsom's powders and oils than for written incantations, yet he knew that old Doc's ways were many and devious, which meant that this could be a mere prelude to something more important. So Rick decided to listen further. Carry that, declared Folsom, and nobody can bewitch you. Why, if you just write those words on a piece of paper and feed it to a horse or to cattle, nobody can bewitch them either. The next time I bet heavy on a trotter, Rick decided, I'll slide one of those slips in his feed bag before the race. Rick was smiling as he spoke, but his deep-set eyes had narrowed on Folsom, whose own face was very serious. Casually, Rick asked, "What's so extra special about those Latin words?" "You can read them backwards or forwards," replied Folsom, "and read them down or up. Always they'll be the same." "And what do they mean?" "Something about a workman holding back on the job, yet still having things keep rolling right along. There's power in those words that can be used for good or evil." An eager gleam came to Rick's cold eyes, but he was quick to hide it. "You know, Doc," he said smoothly, "with all this need for protection, there must be a lot of witchcraft going on. You'd think the only way to beat it would be to go get the jump on it with some witchcraft of your own." "But that would mean calling upon demons," objected Folsom, "and using other things, bad things. Worse things than an owl's wing or bat's blood? Much worse. If you intend to hold people spellbound..." "Oh. So what?" demanded Rick. You've a right to spellbind them before they can spellbind you, or haven't you?" "I suppose you have," replied Folsom, slowly, his dry old face strained. I'm just going to unplug that for now. "I suppose you have," replied Folsom slowly, his dry old face strained. He gave a worried blink. "What? That's all you're thinking of?" he questioned. "Your own protection?" "What else?" Rick retorted. "That's why I've been buying all the stuff you offered me. But look, Doc, I need more action. If someone's trying to put a hex on me, I've got to flag them down before they can." "That makes sense, don't it?" "It does." Folsom stroked his smooth chin wearily. "Would you pay $500 for a rare possession that can enable you to spellbind all your enemies and hold them utterly helpless, I would. Rick brought a roll of bills from his pocket and counted out the amount in 50s and 20s, provided you can prove it works and without fail. Folsom didn't even reach for the money. Instead, he put a further question, and it will be for your protection only, for my protection only. Dusk was gathering outside. My foot's going to sleep. Dusk was gathering outside, but since the windows of the back room were heavily shuttered, it was already dark except for the glow of a few oil lamps. Old Folsom turned the lamps down as he stepped to a stout cabinet and unlocked a heavy drawer from which he took a small oblong box, which was also locked. Opening it with a special key, he lifted out a gruesome trophy, which brought a nervous stare even from the hard eyes of Rick Hendry. The object was a scrawny human hand, its fingers long and bony, like a mummy's. In the dim light, its hue was yellow, and it glistened strangely. That was explained by Folsom's next words, uttered in a hollow tone. The hand of a murderer who paid for his crimes upon the gallows. It has been carefully preserved and dipped in a special wax, prepared from a secret formula, enabling it to be twisted into tiny wicks like this. Deftly, neatly, and he narrowed the wax to little points at the tips of the thumb and each finger. That done, he stood the hand upright on the table. The thumb and finger formed slender candles. Folsom lighted a match, and as he held it close to his face, his gaunt features took on a demonic expression. "Watch everything I do," Folsom said, "and listen very carefully while I perform the ritual and recite the incantation." Starting with the thumb, the old man applied the flame to the tiny wick, and then continued finger by finger, pausing with each step to pronounce a word from the cabalistic charm that appeared upon the scroll: Sator, Aripo, Tenet, Opera, Rotas. Folsom shook out the match, leaving the hand alone illuminated, with each of its 5 wicks showing a weird bluish flame. Then, in a hushed monotone, he declared, "I command that all who dwell within this house and all living creatures beneath this roof shall be spellbound and shall remain so until the mystic flames have been extinguished." The blue flames flickered slightly but continued to burn, casting ghostly shadows about the hushed room, giving its shelves and cabinets the appearance of living things. Then suddenly Folsom raised his voice to a tone of triumph. "Behold the hand of glory!" Again the flames wavered, but continued to burn, as though responding to their master's call. Folsom stepped to the door, turned and waved for Rick to join him, saying, "Come and see how fully the spell has worked." They went out to the front room of the store, where it was still daylight, and there Rick halted in complete amazement. Over by the clock, Ozzy and the man with the white beard were frozen in the midst of a checker game. Ozzy had lifted a checker to make a jump and was looking at his opponent, caught in the pose like a waxwork figure. Mort, equally rigid, was holding a postcard, and his face was showing a half smile as he read the gag line under the picture. Matilda was poised with the top of a candy jar lifted for the benefit of a new customer, a boy who had entered the store, while Rick and Folsom were in the back room. The boy was also standing stock still, his hand pointing to the candy that he wanted. Beside the window, a black and white car was stiffened with one paw forward A black and white cat was stiffened with one paw forward, about to jump to the floor. Rick watched while Folsom walked around the store, snapping his fingers in front of everyone's eyes, including the cat, and chuckling happily when they failed to respond. Finished with his rounds, Folsom cackled. "Are you satisfied?" And as Rick nodded, Folsom plucked the $500 from his hand and beckoned him to return to the back room. There, as Folsom was counting the money, Rick asked pointedly, What if those flames would have blown out? Wouldn't everyone wake up before you wanted them to? Try to blow them out, suggested Folsom. Rick tried and failed. Each flame danced about, but kept on burning. Folsom gestured to the fire extinguisher that was hanging in the corner. Try that. Rick aimed the extinguisher at the blazing hand of glory and let forth a blast. A cloud of white vapor enveloped the lighted thumb and fingers. When it cleared, the blue flames had been reduced to tiny dots, but they popped back to full size instantly.